My friends at Easy Cater are workplace catering pros, helping you find food for everything from daily employee meals to staff meetings and special events. Visit easycater.com/leaderassistant to find out more.
My name is Emily Housley, and today's leadership quote comes from Ben Horowitz, who said, "If you see something below standard and you do nothing, then you've set a new standard."
The Leader Assistant podcast exists to encourage and challenge assistants to become confident, game-changing leader assistants.
Hey friends, it's your host, Jeremy Burrows, and I just wanted to let you know a little bit about today's sponsor. The Leader Assistant Podcast is brought to you by Goody. With employee burnout at all-time highs, it's so important to make your team feel appreciated and recognized. With Goody, you can connect your HR system and automatically send gifts for employees' birthdays and work anniversaries. Talk about automating before your role is automated. It's a modern, hands-free way to show your team members how much you appreciate them. Goody is free to start gifting, and you can get a $20 credit when you sign up. Be sure to mention the Leader Assistant podcast, and Goody will add an extra $10 credit to your account. Go to leaderassistant.com/Goody to give Goody a try. Hey friends, thanks for tuning in to the Leader Assistant podcast. It's your host, Jeremy Burrows. Welcome to episode 182. You can check out the show notes for this episode at leaderassistant.com/182. leaderassistant.com/182. Today, I am excited to be speaking with Emily Housley. Emily is strategic assistant to the CEO of Crisp. And Crisp is crisp.co is the website for the company. And we'll hear more about that from Emily. Emily, where are you in the world and how are you doing?
Well, I am in Atlanta, Georgia right now, and I am absolutely peachy, excited, humbled, and super honored to be speaking with you. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. I've been in Atlanta twice, I think, in my life. So I haven't done too much there. They were both quick trips, but we're super excited to get to know you and hear your story. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your career journey and maybe where you started off and how you ended up at Crisp today?
Yeah, well, I guess if we're starting off from the very beginning, the first time I ever got a paycheck, this is unfortunately not on my resume, but it should be because it's a really great title. I was a sandwich artist at Subway. And yes, that is the actual title. So in high school, my very first job was making sandwiches, making subs at the Subway next door to my high school. So I would walk there after work, make some sandwiches, get into some shenanigans, and then, of course, keep up with all my extracurriculars. Interestingly enough, I, of course, have evolved into becoming the strategic assistant to the CEO at Crisp. And I've been here for a little over 3 years now. And unlike many of the guests that have been on your show who have been career assistants for 10, 15, 20, some even 30 years, I have never been anyone's assistant before. So everything that I read in your book, that I hear on your podcast, and everything, of course, that I'll talk about today, all lessons that I have learned the hard way. So before working at Crisp, I worked as a analyst for a strategic consulting company, and we worked primarily with lawyers and law firm owners. And eventually, I was seeking an opportunity to elevate into a larger, more responsible, friendly role, and didn't have the opportunity to do so. So I thought, well, maybe I'll see what else is out there. And I came across Crisp and thought they looked so cool. The things that they were doing were super amazing. And I applied for a sales job. So I wanted to be a business development representative, which is ultimately accountable for, of course, chasing down the leads, getting them to book a demo consult, all that. Lots of hustle, lots of no's, but loved that the idea that the amount of money that I made directly correlated with how happy I made people, that whole commission structure. So we have a very, very structured hiring process here at Crisp in that you follow very detailed directions. You call a number, you hear a voicemail from the CEO that says, send your email or send your resume to this email address. You take a Wonderlic assessment, a Colby, strengths assessment, a print assessment, which is more about your motivators, all sorts of different things. And eventually I got to the point where I was invited in for an in-person interview. And they said that the CEO wanted to be a part of that. And I thought that was kind of strange, seeing that the role that I was applying for had 3 to 4 layers of directors or managers between, what I was applying for, like definitely bottom of the totem pole. And I was cool with that. So I saw that he had written a book. So I read his book cover to cover, and, put together like the Emily Housley application packet. So all of those different assessments, which I knew they probably had in a file somewhere, but wouldn't it look really cool if I brought all that with me? So the best $86 I ever spent was going to UPS to have 5 copies, professionally printed and spiral bound, of the Emily Housley application packet. And of course, it turned into a wonderful interview. Got to meet Michael, who is so amazing. And after about 45 minutes, the head of sales was getting ready to walk me out. And Michael said, Emily, hang back a second. I want to run something by you. And he said, you can have this role. Like, you would be a great business development representative. You do your homework, you're fun to talk to, you showed up on time, but I'm actually looking for a new assistant. And I wanted to know if you'd be interested in doing that instead. And I thought to myself, is this guy crazy? I have no assistant experience. You have very high standards. I've, read all about you, watched everything about you, seen what you do, and learned, of course, sitting here talking to you. It was almost a little bit scary, but I considered the opportunities for the contributions that I could make, the insights that I would be able to see, the things that I would be able to do. And of course, I wanted a more responsible, more exciting role, and this seemed like it. So I took the leap, no looking back. And he's been crazy and patient enough to keep me around as his right hand. So that was 3 years ago.
Wow. That's crazy. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
So what happened then once you started, and what was your first few weeks like? So, you've never been an assistant before. Did you start like calling people that you may have known that were assistants? Did you just figure it out yourself? How did that whole process go?
Of course, hindsight's 2020, right? So looking back, I would have thought, oh, I should have asked all these questions. I should have looked for books. I mean, God, I wish I had your book 3 years ago, but I have it now and it's great. And so many things I learned the hard way. And one of the greatest examples of this was when I came in, another member of our team was kind of going through Michael's day-to-day with me. This is what his calendar looks like. This is how he schedules things. These are the best times for that. And I sat down at a desk that was near his office and thought, oh, okay, this seems to be close to him. And he used to be in a smaller office that just had all this glass so I could look in and see him. And I saw that there was another desk in his office. And when I showed up for the second day and sat back at what I thought was my desk, someone said to me, oh, no, Emily, this isn't your desk. Your desk is in there. And I said, in there? And he said, yeah, you sit in Michael's office. I was like, well, that's really scary. But it ended up being such a great thing because I was able to see and hear the way that he answers questions, the way that he talks to people, the way that he likes to have a little bit of a reset period between, meeting to meeting, call to call. And through that, I was able to learn so much about him and ultimately about what it means to help him be successful. So one of the silliest mistakes that I made, but got me on the right track.
That's great. So what's remind me again, how long have you been working in this role?
So I've been in this role for 3 years. I started in first week of July in 2019.
Okay. So what's maybe one of the hardest things that you've had to work through in the last 3 years?
Definitely. So I think one of the hardest lessons for me to learn and be able to implement selflessly was the difference between the golden rule and the platinum rule. And so I know you have kids, so you probably heard this very often in the golden rule, where you treat people how you would want to be treated. So if you like people to say thank you, if you like people to compliment you, your work style, treat them as if you would want to be treated. But the platinum rule says treat people how they want to be treated. And just because you like things one way doesn't necessarily mean that your executive or the person you're working with or the person that you're supporting likes those same things. So I am very much an extrovert. I love, but my intrinsic motivators are to be needed and appreciated and to be strong and self-reliant. So give me a compliment and I will be your best friend forever. Like positive reinforcement, words of affirmation. That's my love language. But that's not Michael's. Michael is, while he has a really incredible presence, and of course you can look up any of his videos or his podcast, things like that. He almost has this like extroverted appearance, but he's actually more of an introvert at heart. And he is not the type of person that needs to be cheered up by sweet nothings and, letting him know, Michael, you're doing such a great job. I'm so proud of you. Like that doesn't mean nearly as much to him as getting results. Acts of service is his love language. So I had to learn how to modify the way that I interacted with him and how I connected with him, how I spoke with him, and how I ultimately executed on his behalf in a way that most resonated with him and not necessarily with me.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm an introvert at heart as well. And a lot of people are like, you're an introvert because they hear me on the podcast or they see me speak and whatever. So I can relate to that for sure. Okay, so tell us about the recruitment process. And, you mentioned how you kind of got your role at Crisp. Are you involved with the hiring team and supporting that with, for hiring people at Crisp?
Yeah, well, not so much in the day-to-day. We actually have an entire hiring department because this actually just came out today that Crisp is on the Inc. 5000 list for the 6th year in a row. So
Nice.
Being such a fast-growing company, we're almost in permanent startup mode. And you having worked with many incredibly successful and fast-growing organizations, hiring and recruiting and onboarding and continuously bringing on great talent and great team members is such a huge part of being able to not only have, but continue to grow a successful business. So we have an entire hiring team, but I will get a little bit more involved on the front end when it comes to hiring for candidates where Michael, our CEO, is ultimately going to be the one accountable for giving them the thumbs up or the very courteous thumbs down. And so this happens a lot more in the leadership level, so directors or C-suite candidates, where I will help kind of facilitate the continuous communication on the front end from when we get their test assignment to see, if they say that they're an expert in something, great. We'll give you this quick little test assignment to have you turn it around in 24 hours to demonstrate that you can actually do that. Reviewing their print assessment. So what are their intrinsic motivators? For instance, if someone is applying to be a director of an operations team and their intrinsic motivators are to be unique and special, then they might not be as naturally equipped to drive the sort of results as someone whose intrinsic motivator is to succeed and achieve. So helping to kind of flag things on the front end to make sure that ultimately the candidates that are being presented to Michael are ones that we are all confident in him being excited about. And then, of course, setting up the interview, getting them excited to be here because, hiring is sales and hiring is marketing.
Yeah.
So are we actually going to demonstrate the experience for a potential candidate that aligns with this incredible, sort of brand that we have put out there. Because you can say that you're a great place to work and you can say that you won all these culture awards, but if the people who are representing you are disgruntled and ignore your emails or don't return your phone calls or leave you hanging when you drive up to the office for an interview, that's not a great look. So making sure that I am, of course, like the face and the voice behind the operations that's going on. So everyone is working together and we're all on the same page.
Awesome. So how do you practically present yourself as an extension of your executive? So, and we'll get into this in a minute, you help with the podcast and do a lot of the production with the podcast, and we'll talk about that. But what's something you've done to try to lean into that role of, hey, I'm not just an assistant, I'm actually an extension of my executive?
Yeah, so it's definitely an extension and not a twin. And I think many times assistants, especially ones that are privileged with the, responsibility and somewhat, a perception of authority, may walk the fine line between the decisions that I should and will be empowered to make on behalf of my executive versus the ones that are not necessarily appropriate for me to handle myself. And so something that I've learned in how Michael communicates and how he makes decisions is through observation. And so if and when something comes up that he needs immediately, I've been able to articulate a positive sense of urgency while aligning it with a certain level of respect to whomever Michael may need it from, be it a team member, be it someone on the outside. So when I say that, instead of saying, hey, Michael needs this, you need this right now, presenting it more in the way, we have this goal to reach and it's on a tight deadline. I've gotten this together for you. Will you please help me see it over the finish line by XYZ? And so many times, especially when we're almost put in a position to be the quote unquote bad guy, or, my CEO said this, and I'm just doing this because my CEO said, like all of that, just, they don't need one more person, blaming them or putting the buck on them. So check the way in which you articulate it. And of course, position it in a team first way, in a solutions focused way, and being mindful that at the end of the day, your CEO doesn't need one more headache. So don't give it to him. Don't be the source of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how you put that. And I think that it can be hard to, the specifically, I love how you said, it's not just, hey, my CEO needs this, or he needs this, or she needs this. What's going on? It's, hey, we are all going in the same direction.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done my part. We've done our part. Here's how we are available to help you if you get stuck. And let's push this across the finish line, as you said. So that's awesome. Okay. What about the attitude or mindset of that's not my job? So, I'm very passionate about communicating to the world and to assistants and executives specifically, of course, the idea that we as assistants don't just make copies and get coffee, but I'm also passionate about the idea that we are not above, making copies or getting coffee. And so, yeah, when you hear that, that's not my job. Tell us a little bit about that and maybe why that should not be part of our vocabulary.
Yeah, well, I think you can tie this back to the quote that I opened with. If you see something below standard and you do nothing, then you set a new standard. And this was something that really resonated with me, actually on the job description that I was so kindly handed on the day of my interview. And I think it's something that's actually on many of our job descriptions now. And it says, here are the phrases that will get you voted off the island. And one of them says, that's not my job. So ultimately, as we were saying before, we are all on the same team. We are all aligned ultimately here on the team at CRISP and our vision is to help 1,000 law firm owners grow their revenues by $1 million each, ultimately making $1 billion impact in the legal industry. And so what I do very frequently is I will find, the 7 degrees of separation between the thing that I see wrong and the thing that I see as an opportunity to help make our work environment better, our clients' experience better, our CEO's life better, and tie that back up to the vision. And it is very, very easy to walk through your office and see something that's kind of off base. And it will take you 3 times as much energy to whine about it, complain about it to someone in the break room, go and try and track down the person that's ultimately responsible for it, shame them, call them out and, Slack their leader or email their leader and be like, hey, I saw so-and-so didn't do this, blah, 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 blah. Or you could save everyone the headache. You can save yourself the drama and the time and just do it yourself. I mean, a perfect example of this. I'm not a maid, okay? But I don't like to work in a poor work environment. And neither does anyone. I can't imagine that anyone that I work with likes to work in a pigsty either. And so on my job description, I do not have a bullet under my responsibilities that says, empty the trash and put away the dishes. But if I am walking through the break room and I am not, hard pressed for time, and I see that the dishes in the dishwasher are full, I'm going to empty them. If I see the trash is full, I'm going to empty it. And the great thing is other people see me doing that too. And seeing someone do something makes much larger of an impact than hearing someone say something. So if, you tell someone, hey, the trash needs to be emptied, are you going to go and handle that? Versus if they see you emptying the trash and they know what sort of like role you have or anything like that, they'll think to themselves, wow, oh, that's where the trash bags are? Oh, I had no idea. Now I know that I'll do this. Or, oh, you know what? I actually do have 5 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and do this, because they see what that example of, living out this idea actually looks like, and they're going to be more positively influenced to take the same sorts of actions. So if you find yourself constantly complaining about things, check yourself and ask, when was the last time that I actually was a positive source of being the change that I wish to see? And I think that has made just all the difference for me.
Yeah, I actually posted on LinkedIn today. I said a few different thoughts that I thought of today and was like, oh, I'm going to share these. One of them was average assistants complain about problems and leader assistants solve problems. So, I think your example of taking out the trash or doing the dishes or whatever, it's leading by example and showing that we're a culture of no one is at too high of a pay grade or a role or a title to help out,
Yeah. And I laugh sometimes when I think about almost like the opposite ends of the spectrum of the things that I have done in the same day. I have run to Publix to get bananas because, my CEO had a hankering for bananas on the same day that I drafted a $500,000 agreement on his behalf and booked 5 sales calls, like huge things. But, ultimately it doesn't matter, what is below me. I could easily say, oh, well, I'm not going to go get your bananas. I'm not your personal assistant. I'm not your nanny. It's like, no, I'm here to support you. Sometimes that means getting bananas. Sometimes that means booking calls, so, like whatever it means. And so zoom out a little bit, think about the big picture. What are you here to do? You're here to help. So freaking help.
Right. Yes. Freaking help. Nice. Love it. Okay. So let's wrap this up. It's been great chatting with you, but I do want to hear about how you came to be a part of the podcast production, and really you expanded your role to include production of your executive's podcast. So how did that come about? Was there a process where it was formally added to your job description? Did it include, compensation adjustments? How was that whole process?
Oh man. So we started our podcast. So it's called the Game Changing Attorney Podcast. And I know you've got a little game changer in your book title too.
Yeah.
So I think it's actually goes back to Dave Asprey, the CEO of Bulletproof. So hopefully he doesn't send either of us a cease and desist. But we launched the podcast, or I guess Michael launched the podcast in the beginning of 2020. And initially, the only sort of thing that I was a part of in the facilitation of each episode was getting it on the schedule. Because, of course, sitting here, you need to block a certain amount of time to actually schedule the recording with the guest. Michael, of course, would also want to be able to review some research and come up with questions and prepare for the podcast. And then after the episode, he was very, very hands-on in the post-production. So he would write the voiceover script for the intros and outros and the transitions. He would pick and review all of the promotional assets that we created for each episode, like YouTube bits, audio and video bits, all of those sorts of things, the quote cards, the graphics, everything. He would review the first edit. He would pick out a series of timestamps and things that he wanted to change, review the second edit, and all in, it was taking maybe 7 to 10 hours of his week. And it's like, okay, this is not scalable. So just looking at his calendar, selfishly, I was like, I need to schedule all these other things and I have no time. So how can we delegate some of this to either the marketing team, to the production team? What sorts of things can I help with? And narrowed it down. And then maybe 15-ish episodes in, we got the first edit back, and Michael had an event offsite and wouldn't be able to listen to it until very, very late that night. So I said, I'm going to go ahead and give this a run through. I've familiarized myself with the types of edits that you want to make. So I'll let you know my thoughts. Took a listen to it, sent him a message. These are the things that I would change. And he said, great, I would make all those things, I would make all those same changes. Congratulations, this is now your responsibility. I thought, okay, cool. So picked that up and it eventually grew to kind of add a little piece here and there over time. For example, Michael wanted to feature a particularly exciting CEO on the show, and the marketing team had sent lots of messages and couldn't get a hold of this person. So it's like, okay, let me give this a try. And it came up with a really fun, attention-grabbing gift to send to this person to get their attention. Even if it's a no, that's fine. I just want you to acknowledge that I exist. But they got the gift, they got a kick out of it, got him on the show. So from there, I just started to...
What was the gift? I'm going to interrupt you. What was the gift?
Yeah, so it was, and I won't name him because it's kind of embarrassing, but there's an amazing author and he had a dog named Taco. And because I found his dog's Instagram page.
Okay.
And I know that he worked with his wife. So I found this portrait canvas company where you can put your face and your dog's face in this really lovely portrait. So because the dog's name was Taco, I put his face and his wife's face in the little sombrero Mexican themed, and then his dog in a sombrero, and printed out this 48 by 36 canvas poster, had it framed, shipped it to his office, with a little note. I love your book. I think you're amazing. As a token of our gratitude for all the inspiration we've gotten from your work, I hope you'll accept this gift and get a kick out of it. If you would be willing to allow us the great privilege of an hour of your time, we'd love to feature you on our show. If not, that's okay too. Either way, I hope you get a kick out of this. And, within 24 hours of it being delivered, his EA called me up and said, "You're a riot. Let's do this." And it just, kind of moved on from there. And so now, I guess I have a closet full of hats, a walk-in closet full of hats, but my favorite hat to wear is being the executive producer of our podcast. So sitting on the other side of this table, and for those who are watching this with video, you can see that I'm in a podcast studio. It's super cool. But it's been a really, really fun and exciting way for me to learn more, of course, in researching these guests and reading all of their books and understanding the way that Michael asks questions and helping him to come up with some really cool talking points. And then ultimately being accountable for the post-production of the episode to make sure that it sounds amazing. And I think the best part of my day is, if not every day, then at least 3 times a week, we'll get messages from our clients or people in our community. And I'm sure you can relate to this, where someone reaches out and says, I love your show. I, listened to it. I saw this episode. It meant a lot to me when XYZ. And what a cool thing it is to have the privilege of helping to share all of these incredible insights that we've learned from these amazing, amazing people. And then, of course, I get to meet them myself, because I'll set them up and greet them. I'll correspond with them on the front end and follow up on the back end. And so, of course, Michael is the star of the show, but I get to have the really, really awesome opportunity to help him be a part of it.
That's great. Thanks so much for sharing. Did you expand your compensation package then when that all came about?
So Michael and I did discuss sort of an incentive change in that every single member of our team, every single one, even the roles that we don't even have exist yet, there is an incentive program. So it's all related to KPIs. So your key performance indicators, meaning if you accomplish these things, your little bonus looks like this, and so on and so forth. There are tiers. So I realized that a lot of the time that I was spending ended up being on this. And so I, brought it to Michael and said, I really love this. I really love to be a part of this. I want to see if there's an opportunity for me to sort of tie this into my incentives and my KPIs and give me a little bit more skin in the game. And so we came up with a great formula for me to get a nice kickback that recognizes my contributions there. And it's been great. Everybody wins.
Nice. That's great. Well, congrats to you in this role and how you've expanded and developed in the last few years in your first role as an assistant. So props to you. Way to lead well and to really figure it out on the fly. And we're just really excited to have you on the show, and really hope that we can connect again in the future. Where can people say hi, and how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, so hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm sure Jeremy will do me a solid and put me in the show notes, but you can reach out, say hi anytime. I am, like I said, very much an extrovert, so beware. I will desperately follow up to be your friend. But always excited to connect with fellow growth-minded assistants, and excited to hear from you all.
Awesome. Well, I'll put that link in the show notes, leaderassistant.com/182, leaderassistant.com/182. Thanks again, Emily, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds great. Thank you, Jeremy.
Please review on Apple Podcasts. GoBulls.com